In a quiet village surrounded by tall palm trees and red clay roads, people whispered a story that traveled from one compound to another like a stubborn wind. They said, "If you want to know the true nature of a family, wait until inheritance is mentioned." And in the case of Daniel and his sister Margaret, this proverb proved painfully true. Daniel was a quiet young man, gentle, thoughtful, often lost in his own world. Some said he was gifted with a soft heart. Others said he was simply too kind for the harshness of his family. Margaret, on the other hand, walked around the village as if the sun itself bowed to her presence. Sharp-tongued, proud, and dangerously clever, she believed she deserved everything the world had to offer. When their father passed away, the village mourned sincerely. He had been a respected carpenter, a man whose hands molded wood the way a storyteller molds words. But while the villagers mourned, Margaret saw only one thing: opportunity. On the day of the burial, Daniel sat quietly under a mango tree away from the noise, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. His father had been the only person who saw value in him. Without him, Daniel felt like a leaf carried by the wind, directionless, fragile. That was when Margaret approached him, her eyes red not from sorrow, but from anger boiling beneath her calm exterior. "So," she said, folding her arms, "I heard father left you something." Daniel looked up, confused. "Left me something?" "Don't play dumb, Daniel." Her voice had a sharp edge. "Why would father leave you anything? You've done nothing for this family. You've always been useless." The word struck his chest like a stone. Useless. She said it casually, confidently, as if it were a fact written in the sky. He swallowed hard. "Margaret, why would you say that on a day like this?" "Because it's true. Father should have left everything to me. I handled the hospital bills. I managed the house. I talked to the elders. What did you ever do?" "Nothing." Before Daniel could respond, the lawyer's voice called everyone to gather under the big iroko tree, the traditional place for important family matters. Villagers formed a circle, leaning forward with curiosity. Everyone loved drama, especially when it involved the proud Alatan family. The lawyer opened the old envelope that held their father's final wishes. He cleared his throat and began reading. "To my daughter Margaret, I leave my tools at my workshop. May she continue the legacy of craftsmanship if she chooses." Margaret smiled smugly. Then came the second part. "To my son Daniel, I leave the family house and the 3-acre land behind it." The entire village gasped. Margaret froze, smile wiped away. She stepped forward. "No, that cannot be correct. Read it again." The lawyer frowned. "This is exactly what your father wrote." "But why?" she demanded. "Why would he leave the house to him? He can't even fix a broken chair." Daniel stepped back slightly, overwhelmed. He never expected anything. Not money, not land, not a house. His father must have seen something in him that no one else did. The villagers began whispering. The quiet one got the house? Ah, this will not end well. Margaret will never allow this." Margaret turned toward Daniel, fury burning in her eyes. "This is a mistake. Father was sick. He didn't know what he was doing." Daniel whispered, "Sister, please, don't do this here." "Oh, I will," she snapped. "You don't deserve that house. You can't manage it. You can't maintain it. You can't even pay for repairs. Give it to me. I know how to handle things." Daniel shook his head slowly. "It was father's wish." Margaret stepped dangerously close. "Then you will go against the family? Against tradition?" "Tradition?" Elder Chem, the oldest man in the village, spoke up. "Which tradition says the eldest child must inherit everything. A father chooses what he chooses." But Margaret wasn't listening. That night, when the village grew quiet and only crickets filled the air, she came to Daniel again, this time with tears in her eyes. "Daniel, please," she said, voice trembling. "I'm your sister. You know Mother is sick. You know she needs that house. If you take it, where will she stay? You know she loves me more, and she needs to stay with me. Please transfer the house to my name, for the family." Her manipulation was expertly woven with guilt and emotional pressure, the tools she used best. Daniel looked down at the papers she brought. "I don't understand legal things. I don't want to make a mistake." She smiled sweetly, too sweet. "Don't worry. I filled everything out. You just need to sign. I'll take care of the rest." But deep inside, something felt wrong. Why the sudden gentleness? Why the rush? Why did she come alone, at night, without witnesses? Daniel hesitated. "I should read this first." She snatched the papers back angrily. "Read? Since when can you read legal documents?" "Daniel, stop being difficult. Just sign. It's for Mother." He froze. "Those words again, you useless. You can't read. You can't do anything." He slowly backed away. I need time." The mask on Margaret's face dropped. "Fine. But remember, if you don't sign, the whole village will know you're choosing selfishness over family." The next morning, gossip filled the air like smoke from a careless fire. "Did you hear? Margaret wants the house. Her brother won't." Sign. Trouble is coming. By afternoon, even the elders began discussing the matter. Elder Moyo shook his head. "A storm is brewing in that family." Elder Abina replied, "When greed sleeps in a person's heart, peace does not wake." But no one knew that something far more dangerous was coming. Because Margaret was not finished. Not at all, Dot. She had plans that would shake the entire village. Plans that would push Daniel to the edge. Plans that would expose secrets that were never meant to be heard. And none of them knew. A hidden recording device inside their fathers. Workshop had captured everything. But that revelation would come much later. The morning sun rose over the village like a burning drum, waking up the roosters and setting the dusty roads aglow. But that day, the sun did not rise over a peaceful village. It rose over whispers, rumors, and the brewing storm inside the Alatand. Family. By sunrise, almost everyone had heard of the inheritance dispute. Old Mama Raleigh, who sold roasted corn by the roadside, shook her head as neighbors gathered around her stall. "Ha! I said it," she muttered. "Where there is a greedy child in the family, the burial never marks the end, only the beginning." Young boys collecting firewood stood nearby, listening eagerly. Someone added, "Margaret is not someone to fight openly. She plans quietly, like a snake waiting in the grass." Others nodded. Meanwhile, Daniel walked through the village like a man trapped inside his own shadow. He felt the eyes on him, the whispers, the pity. Children paused their games to look at him. Women turned their heads when he passed. The whole village was watching the drama unfold. When Daniel reached the family compound, he found his mother sitting under the veranda, silently stirring a pot of millet porridge. Her eyes, usually warm, were now ice cold. "So," she said without looking at him, "you want to take the house from your sister?" Daniel's heart sank. "Mother, it's not like that." "Father's will. I don't want to hear it." She snapped. "Your sister takes care of me. She was there at the hospital. She pays the bills. What do you do, Daniel? What do you offer?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. She continued sharply, "Sign the papers. Give the house to Margaret. Do you want me to die on the street?" Tears stung Daniel's eyes. "Mother, I'm not trying to hurt you. I just want to honor Father's wishes. Your father was confused before he died," she said bitterly. "Margaret deserves the house, not you." Her words sliced deeper than she realized. Daniel stepped back slowly. The pot on the fire crackled loudly, as if it too protested the injustice. Just then, Margaret walked in with a confident stride. "Oh, good," she said. "You're here. Daniel, have you made up your mind?" "The elders are asking." "The elders?" Daniel repeated. "Yes." She smirked. "I spoke to them this morning. They want to meet under the big iroko tree this evening." Daniel blinked. "You called the elders?" She shrugged. "The village deserves clarity." But her eyes gave her away. This was not about clarity. This was about pressure. This was about forcing him into a corner, and the villagers, hungry for spice in their day, welcomed the upcoming gathering like a festival dot. As the hour approached, people walked toward the iroko tree. Some sat on wooden stools. Others leaned against their bicycles. Mothers carried babies on their backs and whispered gossip into each other's ears. Elder Ninkem, the oldest and most respected among them, rested his walking stick beside him. Next to him sat Elder Abina, a wise woman known for her deep proverbs and sharp intuition. Daniel arrived quietly and sat on a small bench under the shade. His hands trembled, but he kept them hidden under his tunic. A few moments later, Margaret appeared, dressed as if she were attending a victory ceremony. She greeted the elders with exaggerated respect, bowing deeply. "Elders," she said, "thank you for listening. I am only here to protect my family." Elder Abina raised an eyebrow. "We shall hear both sides. A goat that complains must allow the other goat to bleed also." A murmur of agreement passed through the crowd. Margaret began dramatically. "Elders, you all know how much I did for Father before he died. I stayed with him at the hospital. I ran the household. I cared for Mother. I sacrificed everything, my time, my work, my life." Someone in the crowd whispered, "She speaks truth." Margaret continued, placing a hand on her chest. "Yet Father, in his confusion, left the house to my brother, a man who cannot even manage his own life." Murmurs rose. Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. Margaret raised her voice. "I am not doing this for myself alone. I'm doing it for Mother. She is sick. She needs stability. She needs the house." But Daniel, he refuses to give it. Gasps filled the air. All eyes turned to Daniel. Elder Nkem leaned forward. "Daniel, is this true?" Daniel swallowed, then spoke in a soft but steady voice. "Elders, I am not trying to take anything from anyone. Father left the house to me. I did not ask for it. I did not expect it. But I want to honor his wish. That is all." Margaret laughed loudly. "Honor? You? You cannot even honor a simple responsibility. What will you do with a 3-acre land? Build air? Plant laziness?" The crowd chuckled. Daniel felt his ears burn. Shame crept over him like a dark cloud. He tried again. "I never said Mother cannot stay there. She is my mother too." Margaret interrupted. "He lies. He only wants the property for himself. He wants to throw Mother out." Daniel shook his head desperately. "That's not true. That is exactly what you want." She shouted, pointing a finger at him. The village erupted in noise accusations. Whispers, gasps. Elder Abina slammed her staff on the ground. "Silence. Let the wind speak before the storm." The crowd quieted. Abina's eyes narrowed as she looked at Margaret. "Child, I see fire in your words, not truth." Margaret stiffened. "With all due respect, Elder." But Abina raised a hand, stopping her. Then she turned toward Daniel. "And you, son of Alatund, you hide your voice like a chicken hides its egg. If you speak truth, speak boldly." Daniel gathered courage. "All I want is to follow Father's will." The elders exchanged glances. Elder Nem finally spoke. "We must investigate further. Something here is hidden behind shadows." The village buzzed. Margaret frowned. "Investigate?" What is there to investigate? Abina replied quietly. The roots of the tree are always deeper than the branches we see. Daniel looked up, confused but hopeful. Then Cam made the announcement that silenced the entire gathering. Tomorrow, we will search Father's workshop and documents ourselves. Whatever we find will determine the truth. The crowd gasped. Margaret's face turned pale, because she already knew. There were things in that workshop she hoped would never be found. And as the crowd dispersed, Elder Abina whispered so softly that only Daniel heard. Truth has feet, my son. It will walk out eventually. Little did they know, the truth had already recorded itself. The next morning arrived with an unusual silence in the village. Even the birds seemed cautious, as if they too awaited the truth buried inside the late Alatun's workshop. The elders had ordered that no one should enter the workshop until they assembled. They sealed the door with a woven palm leaf, an old symbol of integrity and witness dot by mid-morning. Villagers gathered in groups, walking toward the Alatun compound like pilgrims moving toward a sacred shrine. Women carried stools, children sat on fences, and elders leaned on their walking sticks, ready to unravel what lay hidden. Daniel stood near the entrance of the workshop, nerves twisting in his stomach. He had slept little the night before, replaying Margaret's words over and over. But beneath the anxiety, a strange spark of hope flickered inside him, as if something was guiding him forward. Margaret arrived late, dressed in her finest wrapper, hair perfectly braided. Some said she came late deliberately, to make a dramatic entrance. Others whispered that she spent the morning rehearsing her lies. When she reached the others, her eyes briefly met Daniel's. She smirked. You are wasting everyone's time. Daniel, there's nothing inside that workshop. Elder Abina, who stood nearby, replied sharply, We shall see. Clay pots without cracks do not fear sunlight. Margaret swallowed hard, but hid her nervousness behind a smile. Finally, Elder Cam raised his staff, opened the workshop. Two young men removed the palm leaf seal and pushed the old wooden door open. A dusty scent filled the air, the smell of sawdust, oil, and memories. Sunlight streamed through the small window, illuminating carved stools, unfinished furniture, and shelves packed with tools. The elders stepped inside first, carefully scanning every corner. Eldenham spoke. We search for Father's documents, instructions, or anything that sheds light. Villagers waited outside, craning their necks to see inside. Margaret stood stiffly behind the elders. Her fingers trembled slightly only. Daniel noticed deep inside the workshop was a small wooden cabinet with a rusty lock. Margaret's eyes widened when she saw it. Elder Abina noticed her reaction instantly. Child, do you know this cabinet? Margaret shook her head too quickly. No, I've never seen it before. It's probably junk. Daniel frowned. Father kept his personal things in that cabinet. Open it, Neckham said. The lock was old, and a single twist broke it easily. Inside were papers, old receipts, a ledger, and a small cloth bag. But beneath those items lay something unexpected. A tiny rectangular device, a digital recorder. Gasps filled the workshop. Margaret's breath stopped for a moment. Elder Abina picked it up gently, as if holding a sacred item. What is this doing here? She asked. Daniel whispered, Father used to record his ideas, but I didn't know he kept this in the workshop. Margaret blurted nervously, Elders, please, that device is old. It must be empty, probably broken too. Elder Cam gave her a long, suspicious stare. Why are you afraid, child? I am not afraid, she stammered. It just wastes time. But Elder Abina had already turned it on. A small light blinked on. It had recordings. Several of them. The village went silent. The elders motioned everyone outside to gather under the iroko tree, where they placed the recorder on a wooden stool. The tree's wide branches cast a deep shade, creating a natural courtroom. Villagers surrounded the stool like bees around honey. Margaret stepped back, her hand shaking now. Elder Cam cleared his throat. We shall listen. The first few seconds were filled with static. Then came the late Olatun's voice, weak but unmistakably firm. My children, if you find this, it means I am gone. I record this because I fear Margaret's intentions. She grows impatient. She wants the house not to honor me, but for her own gain. The villagers erupted in gasps. Margaret's knees buckled slightly. The recording continued. Daniel is gentle, too gentle. I fear she will manipulate him. That is why I placed everything in writing and hid this recording. Margaret came yesterday, demanding ownership of the house. She said Daniel does not deserve anything. She even shouted at me. Margaret covered her mouth as tears formed, not of guilt, but fear. People whispered loudly. Ah, she lied. She pressured her father? Terrible. The recording went on. She plans to trick Daniel into signing. I overheard her speaking on the phone, saying she would threaten him with shame, saying he is useless. She forgets that a lion's cub may look weak, but it grows teeth. Elder Abina paused the recording. All eyes turned to Margaret. She shook her head violently. No, this is fake. Someone edited it. This is not real. But the elders looked unconvinced. Elder, Nation press play again. Another recording. This one clearly captured Margaret's voice loud, sharp, and dripping with venom. I don't care what father wants. That house will be mine. Daniel is too stupid to fight me. I'll make him sign, even if I have to tell everyone he's a disgrace. Gasps turned into full-blown outrage. Mothers shook their heads in disgust. Men folded their arms angrily. Children whispered, she is wicked. Daniel's heart pounded. Hearing those words again, this time with witnesses cut deep, but also healed something inside him. He was not crazy. His pain was real. Margaret broke into tears. Please, it wasn't like that. Father misunderstood. I was stressed, but Elder Abana's voice thundered like a talking drum. Silence. A person who lies to the living cannot argue with the dead. The villagers hummed in agreement. Margaret fell to her knees. Elders, please. You have to believe me. Elder Nen stood tall, leaning on his staff. We shall judge. He turned to the villagers. Tomorrow morning, we will hold a public hearing here under the iroko tree. We will decide the rightful owner of the house and what punishment greed deserves. The crowd roared with excitement. Drama, justice, shame. Nothing was more thrilling for a village. Margaret sobbed as two women helped her up. Daniel stood still, overwhelmed by everything. But as the villagers began walking away, Elder Abina placed a hand on his shoulder. Do not rejoice yet, my son, she said softly. Tomorrow, the truth will face the sun, and the sun reveals everything. Daniel nodded slowly, because tomorrow, Margaret would be judged, not by him, not by lies, but by the entire village. The next morning, before the sun fully lifted its golden head above the horizon, the entire village was already on its feet. Children ran ahead in excitement. Women tied their wrappers tighter, and men adjusted their hats as they walked toward the great iroko tree. It was not just a gathering. It felt like a festival of justice. Even birds perched on the highest branches, as though they too wished to witness the fate of Margaret. Ola-tunde. Daniel arrived quietly, his face calmer than the previous days. For the first time in a long while, he felt the quiet strength of his father's presence. The truth was no longer a burden he carried alone. Margaret, escorted by two aunties, approached slowly. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but the villagers did not offer pity. They stepped aside as she passed, whispering among themselves, greed, It has destroyed her. She shamed her own father. Let the elders teach her a lesson. The elders sat in a semicircle under the iroko tree, staffs resting beside them like silent judges from another realm. Elder Nanjim cleared his throat. Let the gathering begin. Today, we decide the matter of the Alatund inheritance and the conduct of Margaret, daughter of the late Alatund. A hush fell over the crowd. Margaret dropped to her knees at once. Elders, I beg you. I was under stress. I didn't mean anything I said. The recording father misunderstood me. Elder Abina raised her hand, stopping her. A child may twist truth, but the sun does not bend for anyone. Your words were clear. Margaret's lips trembled. Elder Niem looked at Daniel. Daniel, do you have anything to say before judgment? Daniel took a deep breath. He stepped forward. Elders, I don't hate my sister. I never wanted a fight. I only wanted to honor Father's wish. He paused, eyes glistening. And Mother can stay in the house. I would never turn her away. The villagers murmured with approval. Margaret looked up sharply. She had not expected kindness, but Elder Abina spoke sternly. Child, your brother shows mercy, but mercy is not an excuse to escape consequences. Margaret's shoulders sank again. Elder Nam stood up slowly, leaning on his staff. We have listened. We have seen. We have heard the voice of the dead and the behavior of the living. A strong wind blew through the tree branches, almost as if confirming his words. The house and the 3 acres of land shall remain with Daniel, he announced. Cheers erupted among the villagers. Some clapped, others nodded in approval. Margaret burst into tears. Please, elders, please, I will lose everything. But Elder Abina's voice flowed like water over hot stones, firm, wise, unstoppable. You lost everything long before. This day, greed took your eyes, pride chained your heart, and deceit pushed you into darkness. She turned to the crowd. A person who destroys their own family destroys their own fortune. The villagers hummed deeply in agreement, but the elders were not finished. Elder Nkam raised his hand again, signaling silence. For your actions lying, manipulating, dishonoring your father, we impose a penalty. The villagers leaned forward. Even the leaves seemed to pause. Margaret shall work with the women of the village for 6 months. She will fetch water, sweep compounds, and assist the elderly. This is to cleanse her heart of pride. A loud murmur spread like wildfire. Some women nodded approvingly. Good. Let her learn humility. Others said, she needs this. Pride can only be cured through service. Margaret gasped, horrified. Manual labor? Elders, please. I cannot. Abina cut her off sharply. A person who is too proud to serve is not ready to lead. Margaret bowed her head, defeated. Then, Elder Nem delivered the final blow, one the villagers would never forget. And the documents she prepared to take the house will be burned publicly. Gasps echoed. 2 men brought forward the forged transfer papers Margaret had attempted to make Daniel sign. They placed them in a clay pot and set them alight. The flames danced wildly, consuming every lie, every deception, every ounce of greed. Margaret covered her face and wept. Daniel watched quietly. His heart was heavy, not with anger, but with sadness, for what his sister had become. As the ashes settled, Elder Abina concluded with a voice that carried across the entire village. Let this be a warning. The hand that reaches for what is not its own will return empty, but the hand that honors truth will never lack. The villagers erupted with agreement. Wisdom, truth. Let the ancestors bear witness. Margaret was escorted away by the village women to begin her service. Daniel remained under the tree, overwhelmed by the weight of everything. Elder Abina walked up to him. My son, she said softly, you have been tested, and you have passed. But remember, The quiet tree must grow strong roots, or the storm will return. Daniel nodded slowly. I will try, Elder. You must do more than try, she replied. You must rise. Before she left, she added one final proverb, the true heart of the story. A person who calls another useless often fears the greatness inside them. Those words sank deep into Daniel's spirit. In the weeks that followed, the village saw a new Daniel. He repaired the old workshop and began carving wood the way his father once did. His hands were clumsy at first, but with time, they learned the language of the tools. Villagers supported him. They bought stools, carved spoons, small tables. They encouraged him every day. One afternoon, as he worked under the shade of the mango tree, his mother approached quietly. She looked older, smaller, humbled by what had happened. Tears glistened in her eyes. Daniel, I wronged you, she whispered. I believed Margaret. I doubted you. Forgive me. Daniel wiped his hands and hugged her gently. I forgive you, Mother. She held him tightly, sobbing softly. Slowly. The family healed, not perfectly, but genuinely. As for Margaret, her punishment humbled her. Carrying water, sweeping compounds, helping the elderly. These tasks broke down her pride piece by piece. And when her 6 months ended, she approached Daniel with trembling hands. Brother, I am sorry, she whispered. I don't expect forgiveness, but I had to say it. Daniel looked at her long and hard. Then he said softly, change is the only apology the world accepts. She nodded slowly, and so began a new chapter in their family's story, rooted not in greed or bitterness, but in truth, humility, and the wisdom of a father who saw deeper than anyone realized. In the end, the village would remember this tale for generations, and elders would recite the moral. Greed digs a hole deeper than a grave, but truth lifts even the broken up to the light.